With the Cleveland Browns set to open up training camp in a few weeks, we're going to sit down here, try to see if we can establish what possibly be the Browns' 53-man roster as they head into week one, hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. Jeff Lloyd, joined by Sports Illustrated's Pete Smith on your latest Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Joined today, Browns Digest, Pete Smith, SportsIllustrated.com. Obviously, great content day in, day out. If it is not a part of daily rotation, I suggest you go ahead and fix that. Make sure you're following at _Pete Smith_. And you will get any and all readings from Browns Digest. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Best way to be like an everydayer and be a first listener is to go to the Locked On Browns YouTube page, subscribe, put your notifications on so when the content drops, you are all there to absorb it. And Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode of Locked On Browns is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Now, as I said in the beginning, we always try to do this now, and comes back obviously a couple months later. We can prove how smart we are, just how dumb we are in trying to predict this early in the process a Browns 53-man roster. But of course, injuries aside, the offensive side of the ball, and especially I would say the skill positions, running back would be the one where, you certainly have some question marks. We probably all believe that there's a name that will be part of that running back room that is probably not on this roster yet. Then there's also the way the quarterback position will work out with Josh Dobbs, obviously with rookie quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the ability to have a third quarterback dress that does not count against the 46 for game day. Running back, we know Nick Chubb. We assume Jerome Ford. Then some questions after there. Wide receivers. And again, always with this, it comes down to the numbers they keep. For this project, you're thinking obviously 2 to 3 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster, minimum 3 running backs, maybe 4. Remember, the days of the fullback in Cleveland are now over. There are 6 wide receivers, in my opinion, that are probably locks. So we're going to get to this group here. Second segment, we're going to get to the offensive linemen and the tight ends. And third segment, yes, we will get to the dog logo. But Pete, going through these skill groupings here, and again, offense, I probably would even say defense. It doesn't look that difficult right now to get to a final 53. Yes, some things are going to change. Hopefully there's a body or 2 brought in.
For the most part, especially on offense, even the positions that aren't locked up, we have a pretty good idea how they're going to go. The biggest question is how many linemen are they going to keep? Are they going to keep 10, in which case that would get them to 25 on offense, or they just could keep 9, allowing them to keep 26 on defense. But running back is open, whether they like somebody on the roster they have now or somebody else is going to come in. Marquise Goodwin would be the easy favorite to win the last wide receiver job, that last spot, but it's not. It doesn't. There's not enough money guaranteed that would stop them if Jalen Darden balls out, or
Anthony Schwartz all of a sudden finds his way.
Yeah, and with Anthony Schwartz, obviously he has added viability and that he can play on special teams, which has value. They've got a lot of receivers there, and that's the one. They've got a lot of guys competing for one spot. So even though Goodwin feels like he's going to eventually get that job, there is an opportunity for somebody to have a big camp and take it from him. For the offensive line, the tackles and the centers are basically set. With drafting DeJuan Jones and Luke Whippler, we sort of have a good feeling on where that's going to go. With Whippler, Yes, there's a situation where Nick Harris could outplay him to the point where the Browns have to figure something else out with him, or they just decide, this kid can't play. But even if Whippler loses the battle, technically, his rookie contract is valuable enough that they'll keep him and move on from Harris, as long as it's reasonably close. And then, you get to guard Michael Dunn, easily the favorite to win the primary guard spot. He's played games for this offense and been successful, both as a guard and as a center. And having that third guy who can snap is always valuable. The only reason he's not a lock is, for whatever reason, Michael Dunn has zero money guaranteed on his league minimum deal, which feels like absolute theft, given how difficult it is to find good offensive linemen. And the Browns have him for practically nothing, which is great for them, but seems like a missed opportunity for other teams.
And you get to this in that, look, I think it's really easy to get through 8 at the offensive line position. Obviously, Hudson year 3, I think they saw growth in year 2 that they liked. You will see what the, down the road home is for James Hudson. The Juwan Jones experiment is something that's going to be fully invested in, seeing what they can basically take this young man and, hopefully he can hit the heights that the Browns believe he can hit. Whippler takes you right away to 8. And then you get to the interior. And, again, injuries can factor in. Whoever is the hot hand, because you don't assume Joe Bitonio is going to play a lot this summer. I don't see Wyatt Teller playing a lot this summer. So you're truly going to have a competition there, and it's going to be a competition for basically who can play swing guard. You're not going to take Luke Whippler and say, we're going to teach you something else. Guy's been a center, always been a center. It's way too early in the process. And certainly, why you're, entrenching this guy in to be a backup center, the last thing you want to do. Nick Harris, everybody loves him, but we know, his home outside of center, it's never really worked well there. Pete, old good friend, old faithful, and we've been doing this since basically about 2018. Drew Forbes even found his way away, but found his way back. Certainly a name to watch there. Obviously, there is the young man that was brought up from Washington. Coach Callahan has some experience with. But the Browns might be in a position, and look, they've gone 10 to O linemen in the past. But this roster is currently constructed differently. You have a lot more skill players, a lot more length in the skill players. You're probably going to have to find a way to keep 4 running backs, even if ideally you only want to use 2. Again, the way the roster is currently constructed. And you're going to want to find room here because ideally, there's some big numbers you want to go with at the defensive line position and certainly the defensive backs position. But we'll get to that in segment 2.
Were you waiting on me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, look, I think I agree. Guard's going to be interesting. Is there somebody good enough to own that job? I still like Drew Forbes, 6th-round pick in 2019. He's still 26 years old, physically freaky player that just needs to find consistency both in his play and his health. Dawson Deaton coming off the ACL was a guy that was a center, but really sort of got moved into being a guard. But hey, again, here's another spot where potentially being able to do 2 things is valuable. But it does feel like there's an opportunity for them to try to sneak somebody to the practice squad. That's obviously a dicey situation when it comes to the offensive line. Again, there are always teams looking for talented 300-pound players. And the Browns have finally started losing some of them in free agency. Hjaldi Froholt is with the Arizona Cardinals, for example. But yeah, tight end, done. Quarterback, pretty much done. Wide receiver, it's just a 1 spot. Running back, that's open. And then, if they keep a 10th lineman, that's going to be the big thing on offense.
I mean, if you want to go with the 10th offensive lineman, then you're talking only 3 running backs, which would mean obviously Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, and essentially what is behind door number 3. Now, I know Pete's going to pull for his little buddy from the rambling wreck of Georgia Tech. We're going to switch it up here. We're going to do, some musings here, try to get, some thoughts here on the defensive side. And there is probably an ideal preference on the defensive line position, but the question is whether or not they're essentially going to have the horses to pull that off. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA Finals, because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Look, FanDuel, they got fantastic promotions every day. The app, it's safe, secure, it's simple to navigate. You get your money instantly. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. My biggest suggestion to you is we have a strong group of everydayers here at Locked On Browns. Become more like the everydayers, and the best way to do that is to subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube page. Notifications on, audio-wise, Locked On Browns, always available wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, we discussed a little bit here on the offensive side, and it seems a little more clear-cut. The defensive side of the ball, it's maybe where a couple more questions come up here. And Pete, I do truly believe the plan, if the Browns could truly make it happen, would maybe be 10 on the defensive line, 5 linebackers, 10 secondary players. And it's going to be difficult here because, they kind of committed to some guys, and I don't want to say committed, brought some guys in here. 2 players at the linebacker position with expectations of being core special teamers. Obviously, Mike Ford, the cornerback, of being a core special teamer. But ideally, you're looking at a team that, and we heard Jim Schwartz say he'd like to have a lot of opportunity where he can play 5 down linemen. So you're thinking a 10-5-10 split. But the question is, and we have our questions about the interior, is finding 10 that maybe are going to be good enough to go to this 10-5-10 split.
Yeah. Look, given what we know about the defensive line and Jim Schwartz's preferences, I don't see any way they keep less than 10. You're going to try to rock at 50 front and then say, we're only keeping 9 guys. It's a really difficult thing to pull off.
Third quarter, getting gashed into the late third quarter, into the fourth quarter when nobody's got any juice.
And he's also saying, look, I want guys to be fresh. I want guys to be constantly firing off the ball. You need dudes, and you need, obviously, the big report is getting enough guys that they continue to do that who can play effectively. So I think you're getting 10 there. Linebacker, I've said all along, I think they're only going to keep 5. And that's in part, and the Browns have sort of been doing this the last couple of years. 1, they don't have a ton of investment in linebacker anyway. And 2, They've been really successful using the practice squad as sort of an extension of the active day roster.
As much as we joke about this team and the lack of money spent at the linebacker position, they get their return each and every year.
Yeah, I mean, and then the sad part is after you get past the first couple guys, there's not a whole lot of drop off after that. So you don't really need to hang on to somebody because you're worried somebody else is going to grab them. There's always a guy available. We've seen any number of guys come through here. And last year was a great example. For as bad as the defensive line was, they found ways to get the linebackers to be productive, even when they were down 6 and 7 on injured reserve. It wasn't a great situation, but it wasn't like the disaster that some people would like.
Reggie Rangland on Christmas Eve looked like a world beater.
Yeah. And you had Jordan Kunashik and some of these other guys, Tony Fields won a football game for this team. Yep. And had some other plays. So then at that point, you're at 15 guys, which leaves you 10 at DB, unless you're going to keep 9 on the offensive line, in which case you can keep an extra 1. At this point, 5 corners seem to be pretty safe. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, AJ Green, and Cameron Mitchell all pretty much locked up. Michael Ford Jr. stands out as the guy who would probably be the 6th guy. And here again, special teams, and especially because the Browns seem to be using more of their defense to make up special teams than their offensive guys. That is a key factor in this. But, get guys like David Bell play special teams. Donovan Peoples-Jones obviously returns punt, but that's all he does. Marquise Goodwin doesn't play specials. So defense is going to have to carry that weight. Cameron Mitchell, obviously in addition to the fact they like him as an inside-outside versatility guy, played 383 snaps of special teams at Northwestern. Like, that's a huge part of what he's going to do for you. So those 5 are pretty much set. If Michael Ford Jr. is good enough, he's going to be number 6, which leaves you with potentially 4 safeties or 5 safeties, depending on the offensive line count.
Well, we know that there's 3 keepers right off the bat at the safety position.
3 safeties are done. Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, Rodney McLeod.
Then, I mean, ideally, and, unless he plays his way off of this roster, you got to think Ronnie Hickman's got a serious shot at making this final 53.
Well, I would say that D'Anthony Bell is going to have to be very good. Obviously, his big draw last year was special teams, and that could still earn him a roster spot this year. I question if him being good and that good at it is enough to secure him a roster spot.
Considering there's also about a 3 or 4 year age difference between him and Hickman anyway. So
yes, and obviously Hickman has experience on special teams. If Jim Schwartz is a guy who wants to lean into playing a box safety more, that is certainly plays to Ronnie Hickman's strengths. He's a guy who plays better playing downhill, seeing the ball, scraping as an extra linebacker and all those things. That's really good. And then Tanner McAllister is also interesting in the potential sort of MJ Stewart type of mold. Either way.
Is he still with Houston?
Yes.
Okay.
Either way, this setup suggests that the Browns could easily be happy with just keeping 4. Let's say it's Hickman, for example. They have a pretty good shot of being able to get at least one, if not both, D'Anthony Bell and Tanner McAllister to the practice squad. So we'll see. Is a 5th safety worth more than a 10th lineman? I would defer to the 300-pound guys, but we'll see how they work it out. But yeah, that's sort of the framework of what we're looking at. 10 defensive linemen, 5 linebackers, 10 DBs.
And this is where you have a little bit of an advantage, though. I mean, if they're able, to have 2 or 3 guys that Bill Callahan says, look, I can play with them if I have to. And then you can kind of start to play that little bit of Russian roulette to see, can we just get one of these 3 through the process and to the practice squad? Obviously, things can change tremendously after that. And again, this is the initial 53. Okay. But I mean, if you're supposed to be, a guy who can work the wonders that they do, this does create opportunities where you may have players that, may be able to fall through. Because, you have guys who are such hands-on, good teachers in Bill Callahan, obviously Jim Schwartz. I mean, at linebacker, I think it's Anthony Walker. I think it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. It's probably Sione Takitaki. And look, if Sione's ready to go week 1, we're still not sure. We're still not sure. Then after that, you kind of just get to, I would say, if we're going to keep another one, it would probably be Tony Fields. Then you get into that Kunizek, the special teamer from the Bears who has the relationship, obviously, with Bubba Ventrone, the Jacob Phillipses of the world, Pete.
Look, and this is why I said all offseason, there's not the linebacker space you think there is on this team. Because the way I broke it down, Anthony Walker Jr. and Sione Takitaki. Now, maybe there's a scenario where Sione Takitaki isn't ready and they do some roster gymnastics and put him on IR to start the season and they can keep another guy. But either way, he's going to eventually end up on the active roster. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Tony Fields. I'm not saying it can't happen that Jacob Phillips can beat out Tony Fields, but Jacob Phillips just has 3 season-ending injuries. And then, unfortunately, when he was on the field last year, save for a few snaps against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he stunk. And I like the player coming out, but it just hasn't been there for him. And I don't know if they're going to bet on him. Additionally, Tony Fields, he's on the last year of his rookie deal. Tony Fields is going to be entering year 3. Mm-hmm. So that's another advantage. If you were to ask me who's the most likely guy to make the roster at this point, it's Jordan Kunaszyk. One, because Kunaszyk was really good on special teams for the Browns last year. They obviously re-signed him after releasing him
specifically
to do that specific job. And then attached to the Taki element is Kunaszyk can play Sam, which is where Taki would play if he's fully healthy. And for whatever reason, Jim Schwartz wore the 51 because he loved what he saw from Kunaszyk in terms of sort of how he handles his business within the building. Jason Tarver said they love Kunashik's movement skills with certain things he's done, even though he hasn't played a ton of linebacker in the NFL. But hey, I love the kid coming out of Cal. It's always nice to be right, as his wife can attest. I was a early adopter on Jordan Kunashik, but that's where I think things stand. So right now, I think he's the favorite for the 5th linebacker. I have some theories on how certain things are going to play out defensively. There is right now, Jordan Elliott's the only 3-tech I have that's sort of a lock to make the roster. And there is guaranteed money attached to Tristan Hill, to Maurice Hurst, and then to the linebacker from the Colts, Matthew Adams, who's the special guy. I think in part that to the Browns was the cost of doing business to get them here and then potentially to be able to get them to the practice squad in a scenario where whoever doesn't make the final roster could be that. Now, that's in a world where the Browns don't sign another veteran. Obviously, I'm hoping they do that.
Of course.
But like right now, there's space for 2 3-techs, and there's 3 guys competing for the job between Winfrey, Tristan Hill, and Maurice Hurst. But I feel like the Browns sort of included that guaranteed money to be like, look, we're going to take care of you. If you get through waivers, why don't you make a heavy consideration to come back and be here so that they have the depth? Because again, with the length of the season, you're going to have attrition at some point. That guy's probably going to get called up to the active roster or something along those lines, whether it's Hurst, Hill, or whatever. I think if Winfrey were to get released, he'd probably get scooped up by somebody else. It's the same thing with Kunashik is theoretically competing with Matthew Adams, although Kunashik is a little bit more viable in terms of an on-field role. Matthew Adams is a pure special teams guy, but you guarantee him about basically $450,000 that if he's cut, he gets that and goes, hey, I really like what the Browns are doing here. Why don't I stay there if I get through waivers and all that? Because he's not a guy he may not be a guy that's sort of, in demand. And that allows them to get a guy who they're going to basically activate every week anyway and say, here, come play special teams. So that's sort of how I think that will work out. And you can make the same case for safety, even though there's no money attached with those guys.
And the Kunashik family, you can go ahead and send the Christmas ham to Pete right now, obviously.
They know better.
Obviously all the free pub for the Kunashik family. We are going to close it out here with segment 3. And yes, we will discuss the new dog logo. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith. Appreciate you all for being here. For everyone who is an everydayer here at Locked On Browns, you guys are greatly appreciated, making Locked On Browns your first listen day in, day out. My suggestion, everybody new here, whether it's Zadarius Smith, whether it is, was it draft coverage, whatever way you found yourself here, be more like the everydayers. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube page, notifications on, and therefore the content, when it drops, you're all there to consume it. And of course, always available, always free, wherever you get your audio podcasts. Pete, the elf, quickly as he came into our lives, and look, I don't care. No, I wasn't a fan. It's an elf, for God's sakes. I understand.
You're wrong, by the way.
Well, how am I wrong? How am I wrong?
They're not getting rid of the elf. The brownie's not going anywhere. All they've done is they've said, hey, for fans who like the helmet, we've got merch for you with the helmet. For people who like the brownie, we've got merch with the brownie on it. And now they go, hey, you don't like either of those? Here's a dog we can put on merch for you. All it is just giving people who are divided on this their path to whatever merch they want. This isn't like the Jets where they have one thing to put on everything and no one gets to have any fun. That's the advantage they have. This whole thing was about selling merch, and God bless them that it worked with the dog they've got. Whatever. They went with the old dog who's seen some things. May know
a little bit of a Rorschach test.
Secrets. And then, yes, that part I don't really mind. I think it's kind of interesting that both the logos that they did that finished in the finals, they included a bunch of sort of little mementos to the past. Some of them I think.
But my question is, Pete, and here's my question: were those in the initial renderings, or
yes,
did this?
Because when they came out with the other one, the final two, like when they initially came out with the voting, they came out straight away and said this is all the stuff they jammed into the original dog.
But what I'm wondering though is if that was from the original process where everything was submitted, and then maybe, hey, let's take this down to the quarterfinals, the finals, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, only the one was the fan one. Everything else was within house, so they could do all this stuff, paying homage to various things. I think the bridge is too much. Everything else is fine. The bridge, you get this weird gaping mouth that just looks like a path into oblivion. But like the helmet's fine, the football's fine, even though I still don't really see a football. I mean, I get it. There's a shape there, but the 8 championships with the spikes is fine.
Makes sense.
I like the municipal stadium element to it. The state of Ohio is weak. That's weak. Now listen, I'm happy to give Steubenville to West Virginia, but that's a lot of real estate you're giving up with that janky Ohio drawing. So yeah, look, it's fine. Like I said, it gives you something to go, because this was popular. And the other part of this that was really smart.
That is the key here. They're very smart in what they do with this. Yes.
The players were big fans of this, and they really like this one, even though Mike Ford, currently being arraigned on charges for 24 counts of voter fraud, to try to swing the election, tried to manipulate it. This one still won. The players loved it. And let's not kid ourselves. As with everything, you're marketing not only to fans, but you are marketing to players. If players like it, it's great for you, because that means one more incentive on playing here. And of course, they're going to have, when they show up to training camp, guaranteed when they get to the Greenbrier, a bunch of them are going to be wearing gear with this logo on it to obviously push more merch.
I mean, we've seen it on a couple of baseball hats. Look, I mean, you slap that sucker on a brown long sleeve tee, I'm all in. Well, you have me at long sleeve tee anyway. Just something about wearing Brownie the Elf. No, and you guys see, I have a ton of it. I wear a ton of it. It's just not something I could ever get behind. But I guess the moral of the story, Pete, here is if you have no logo, best part to do is to maybe do the dance, the nuance that you have multiple logos. Now, what's on the field come September is what I want to know.
Look, if they're going to keep the brownie on it, fine.
No!
Just look, I don't care. Ultimately, I just want to see them win. But the damn brownie is so big. It takes up it goes from the 30 to the 30, and it's
an
all
elf.
the way across
that's
the field.
That's the whole thing, because on the field it looks like this gigantic gargantuan elf on steroids. Look, my high school, Red Bank Catholic, our nickname was the Caseys. Casey was a mythical, basically an evil leprechaun type thing. But the point is, it's a leprechaun. It's this big, literally. And we would go to road games, and as we're warming up, WTF is a Casey. I'll be honest with you, we didn't know. We had no idea either. And once we kind of found out what it was like, well, there's really nothing really that impressive or scary, whatever. I mean, we were Irish Catholic high school. All right, well then just call us the Red Bank Catholic Irish. Because I don't know, animals, things like that, big games, whatever. Yeah, that's fine. And Pete, and before we put a ball on this, DJ Reader, what is with the shovel?
Yeah,
for the Bengals.
Because
if DJ Reader is digging potholes or things for the Cincinnati Bengals, what will be in the offset language for Joe Burrow's contract? Is he going to be the one that's finally going to have to bring food into the facility for this team?
Right. So if people haven't seen this, they should check it out. But the Bengals sit like the Browns are doing, you've seen previews with them with the rain and whatever. The Bengals have this weird Legends of this Hidden Temple vibe background with Hunt ready to hunt, and then they've got Orlando Brown Jr. holding the football and looking at you all menacingly. Tyler Boyd sitting there holding a ball with the visor on so you can't see anything, and then DJ Reader is sitting there holding a shovel, has broken dirt, which has nothing to do with hunting, unless you're basically saying that we are hunting, killing,
the dead,
and then burying bodies, which I don't know how much of that is hunting at that point, but whatever. To me, it just looks like the Bengals have gotten even cheaper, and they've put him on grounds crew duty on top of everything else he has to do. And this Hidden Temple thing is the new Bengals practice field, which still, the reason it's dark in this background is because it's still under a freeway overpass.
It gave me some sort of WWE vibe, like the old Mankind versus the Undertaker feud back in the day, because the dead man versus the psychopath. It just, and look, DJ Reader, God bless you. You're one of the few people that's gotten paid by that organization. And, Joe Burrow, I don't know, maybe, when the defense is on the field, you're going to have to run up and, sell some Slurpees or some cotton candy. I have no idea. But yeah, it just made no sense. And the other thing was you had the offensive tackle holding the football. It was, if anything, just stand there and look like Orlando Brown, like a big, huge, gargantuan man like you are. It felt a little like, Pop Warner-ish, like the football card where everybody does the same pose and da, 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 da. But there's plenty of time to pick on the Bengals.
Well, listen, he has just gotten beat by Myles Garrett, who flew up the field, caused a sack fumble, and this is Orlando Brown now recovering the fumble because he got beat.
As it's 4th and 21 and the punter's coming on the field. All right, I'm with it. That makes sense. It makes sense. And of all the pictures of the wide receivers to put up there, and no disrespect, we've always loved Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd's a fantastic player. The one they put out first, they don't put out Jamar Chase. They'll put out T. Higgins. They put out Tyler, whatever. Tyler Boyd, do yourself a favor. Get the heck out of Cincinnati because you're a great, great football player, and you can put up great, great statistical production if you moved on. Right now, you've kind of fallen by the wayside. So go ahead and find your way out of that organization right quick. This has been, wait a minute. He is Pete Smith, Browns Digest, SportsIllustrated.com. Pete and his team put a great amount of content every single day. So make sure you are checking that all out. Best way to do that is to follow Browns Digest on Twitter. Another best way to do that is to follow @_Pete Smith_ on Twitter as well. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host, @Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Show itself at Locked On Browns. My suggestion to all of you is be more like the everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen. The best way you can do that is by subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel and having the notifications on. So when the content drops, you all are there to digest it. Audio-wise, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go, Browns.